Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why sometimes it feels like one stressful thought just triggers a whole cascade of other problems, both in your head and in your body? Well, this new study might have a clue. Imagine stress not as one big thing, but as a web of interconnected feelings, thoughts, and even physical sensations. That is the core idea behind this fascinating research. Instead of looking at stress as a single score, these scientists wanted to see how different stress-related symptoms influence each other over time, kind of like dominoes falling. So how did they test this web of stress? They recruited 46 university students and asked them to use a special app for a week. For 7 days, these students got 5 alerts every day, spaced out every 3 hours. Each alert came with a short survey asking about how they were feeling, any physical discomforts they might have had, and what they were doing to try and relax. They were asked about things like feeling nervous, having headaches, or if they'd been using social media. The questions were designed to capture different parts of the stress experience. Some looked at general feelings of stress, like feeling overwhelmed or that things weren't going well, drawing from a well-known stress scale. Others focused on physical symptoms, the kind that might show up when you are stressed, like muscle pains or heart discomfort, based on the big diagnostic manual for mental health. And then there were questions about things people do to try and de-stress, like physical activity or browsing social media. Now, for the fancy science part, they used a statistical method called multi-level vector autoregression. Don't worry about the name too much. What it does is create two kinds of networks that map out these relationships. One is the temporal network, which shows how things from one moment predict things in the next moment, about 3 hours later. The other is the contemporaneous network, which shows how things are related to each other at the same moment in time. Think of the temporal network like a chain reaction and the contemporaneous network like a snapshot of what is happening all at once. And what did they find in these networks, in the temporal network, which tracks changes over those 3-hour intervals? They noticed something really interesting about the mental side of stress. They saw what they call feedback loops among the cognitive psychological symptoms. This means that certain thoughts or feelings related to stress seem to trigger each other, creating a cycle. For example, feeling like difficulties were piling up could lead to feeling more stressed and less in control, and then feeling more stressed could lead to more physical symptoms like dizziness or heart discomfort. This cycle is important because the researchers suggest it might be a potential activation pathway for chronic stress. Basically, if these negative thoughts and feelings keep feeding into each other, it could get harder and harder to break free, leading to ongoing stress. They also found that physical and psychological stress symptoms could be closely linked, and these links could happen quite quickly, within that 3-hour window. Looking at the contemporaneous network, the snapshot of things happening at the same time, they saw that different types of symptoms tended to group together. So, positive psychological symptoms, negative psychological symptoms, and physical symptoms often appear together. This means when someone was experiencing one of these, they were likely experiencing others too, at that very same moment. Now, what about those stress reduction methods? Here is where it gets a little less straightforward. Things like physical activity and using social media for entertainment or to keep up with people, they didn't really show the expected effects of reducing stress symptoms in these networks. In fact, sometimes it seemed the other way around, with stress symptoms predicting increased physical activity or social media use, which is the opposite of what you'd expect if they were effective stress reducers. For instance, they found that increased physical activity was actually linked with more aches and heart discomfort in the contemporaneous network, which is quite counterintuitive. And when it came to social media, the way people used it didn't seem to help reduce stress in the way the researchers expected. This might be because social media is complex, and how you use it matters a lot. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it makes things worse. It is super important to remember that this study has limitations, and the researchers are very clear about this. The biggest one is that while they see these connections and predictions over time, they can't definitively say one thing causes another. Just because feeling stressed at one point leads to feeling dizzy 3 hours later doesn't mean stress directly caused the dizziness. There could be other hidden factors at play, or even just coincidence. It is like seeing two friends always walking together. It doesn't automatically mean one is following the other. They might just be going to the same place. Also, the way they interpreted some of the questions, like assuming certain PSS -10 items, were purely about cognitive appraisals, is an assumption that needs to be tested further. And the sample size, while decent for this kind of detailed data collection, is still relatively small and limited to university students. So we can't assume these findings apply to everyone everywhere. So what is the big takeaway? This study provides a really valuable glimpse into the dynamic and interconnected nature of stress. It suggests that stress isn't just a single entity, but a complex interplay of thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations that can influence each other rapidly. The idea of a cognitive feedback loop driving chronic stress is particularly compelling and offers a new way to think about how we might intervene. While the study didn't find clear evidence for how stress reduction methods like physical activity or social media use work in this dynamic context, it opens up avenues for future research. Perhaps we need to measure these activities more precisely or look at them over different timescales to truly understand their impact on stress. It's a step forward in understanding the intricate dance of stress in our daily lives. And it gives us some great ideas for where to look next to help people manage it better. What do you all think about these findings? Does this interconnected view of stress make sense to you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science explained. See you next time.